Hello there, I'm Ethan. Last month, I took my computer-based IELTS exam in Montreal. Here is my result. Overall 9 with a 9 in listening. A few years ago, I also took the paper-based IELTS and got a 9 in listening, twice. So in this video, I'll show you how I managed to score a band 9 in listening. Over the next few weeks, I'll share tips and tricks on each section of the exam with you. First, let me quickly explain the format of the IELTS listening test. Then, I'll share some practical tips. IELTS listening is the same in both academic and general training exams. It lasts about 30 to 35 minutes and includes 4 sections. Each section has 10 questions. The questions get harder as you progress through the test. You need 30 correct answers for a band 7, and if you get 35 correct answers, you'll get a band 8. To get a band 9, you usually need 39 or 40 correct answers. But for most people, the biggest challenge in IELTS listening is time. Everything happens very quickly, and losing a few seconds can cost you a question. So I'll focus on how you can manage your time better and improve your score. There are 2 types of IELTS, paper-based and computer-based. In the paper-based listening test, you're given a question booklet and a separate answer sheet. While you listen to the recording, you write your answers in the question booklet. At the end of the test, you get 10 extra minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. This time is more than enough to transfer your answers. So during the test, you should only write in the question booklet. In the computer-based test, you type your answers directly on the screen. There is no transfer time at the end. Instead, you get 2 minutes to quickly check your answers, mainly to check spelling. I personally prefer the computer-based IELTS because you always use headphones and the recording is much clearer. In some paper-based test centers, you're given headphones. However, the 2 times I took the paper-based IELTS, the exam was held in a large hall with many test takers, and the audio was played through big speakers. The sound was actually very clear, and as I mentioned earlier, I still managed to get a band 9 in listening both times. Even so, I personally prefer having my own headphones because it helps me focus better on listening. In another video, I'll go through all the differences between the computer-based and paper-based IELTS, and you can come back and watch that video on my channel. IELTS listening is not really hard. The topics are usually familiar and the speakers generally speak quite clearly. However, what makes many test takers lose points is the fact that you need to listen, read, and write at the same time. Because of this, the test is not only about listening, it is also about time management. By the way, if you're preparing for IELTS, write in the comments what part of listening you struggle with the most. Time, maps, multiple choice questions, or maybe section 4. I'll use your comments to decide what videos to make next. In IELTS listening, every second matters. If you lose your focus for just a few seconds, you can easily lose a question. And if you read the questions for the first time while the recording is being played, you are very likely to lose focus and miss some answers. This is why it is extremely important to read the questions before the recording starts for each section of the test. Before each section of the test, you get about 1 minute to read the questions. It is very important to use this 1 minute wisely. During this time, you should read as many questions as possible and underline the keywords in the questions. Then, while you're listening to the recording, you should keep your attention on 2 questions at the same time. The question that you're answering and the next question. Remember, the questions always follow the same order as the information in the recording. However, if you miss one question, you should immediately try to identify which question the recording is talking about now and find your place again in the list of questions. At the end of each section, you get 30 seconds to check your answers. Never use this time to check your answers. Instead, you should spend this time reading the questions in the next section. Sometimes you will get a multiple choice question. These questions usually have 3 choices. In most cases, all the choices, or at least 2 of them, are mentioned in the recording. The speaker may mention one choice first and then change their mind. For example, they might say, I think the meeting is on Friday next week. Oh no, it's actually the day before. In this case, you know the correct answer is Thursday, not Friday. Keep this in mind. IELTS listening uses this technique very often to check whether you're listening carefully. Another important point is this. If you're not sure what the answer is, take a guess. You do not lose marks for an incorrect answer, and you will not hear the recording again. So, whether you're confident about an answer or not, write something. Never leave any question unanswered. Now let's take a look at some common question types. There is one type of question that you will always see in IELTS listening. Complete the notes below with one word and or a number for each answer. Sometimes it may be 2 words and or a number. Before the recording starts, you should read these questions carefully and decide what type of information is needed in each gap. Based on the sentence, you can often predict what kind of information is missing. It could be a house number, a price, a phone number, a date, an adjective, or a noun. Predicting the type of answer helps a lot when you hear that part of the recording. Also remember this. Once you write your answer in the gap, the whole sentence must be grammatically correct. For example, look at this sentence. George Washington organized a blank about Cato. If you hear the answer play, you know it must be singular, not plural, because the article a comes before the blank. If a word needs to start with a capital letter, for example, the name of a city or a person, you must write it with a capital letter. Unfortunately, in IELTS, a spelling mistake means a wrong answer. In the first section of the listening test, you will usually hear numbers and names of people or places. The speaker normally says the name first and then spells it out for you. These names are often unusual, with spellings that you may not expect. So, you need to listen very carefully to how the name is spelled out. For example, you may see something like this. Building 10A, blank, industrial estate. In the recording, you might hear,
And what about the location? Where exactly are the workshops held?
They're in Building 10A. There's a big sign on the door. You can't miss it. And that's in Fradston Industrial Estate.
Sorry?
Fradston. That's Fradston.
And that's in Grassford, isn't it?
this way, you know exactly how to write Fradstone, even though it is not a common name in English. Also remember this, if a word has 2 standard spellings such as practice and practice, which are different in British and American English, both spellings are acceptable in the IELTS test. Some IELTS listening questions can be quite wordy. There can be a lot of text to read, and that alone can make these questions difficult. You may have one question with 3 long choices, or sometimes one question with 5 or 6 choices. When there are 3 choices, you need to choose one correct answer. When there are more than 3 choices, you're usually asked to choose 2 of them. The best strategy for these questions is to underline the keywords in the question. And if you have time, underline the keywords in each choice as well. This way, when you hear those words in the recording, you immediately know where to focus. But remember this, IELTS listening never makes it easy for you. Very often, the speaker will say something that sounds like the correct answer and then change their mind or correct themselves. So, whenever you see a multiple choice question, you must read all the choices before the recording starts and identify the keywords. One reason that I like the paper-based IELTS listening is that I can underline the keywords before I start listening. In the computer-based test, I have to read the choices and identify the keywords only in my head. I cannot rely on physical marking, and for me, that is a big disadvantage. So, this is something you may want to think about when choosing between the computer-based and the paper-based IELTS. In some listening tests, you will see a diagram or a map of a place. Some items on the map are labeled and some names are missing. During the recording, you're given directions to help you find those missing names. There are 2 main ways directions are given. One way is based on geography: north, south, east, and west. On a map, north is always at the top, south is at the bottom, and east and west are on the sides. The other way is through movement, such as turning left or right or going straight ahead. The most important thing with maps and diagrams is to find the starting point before the recording begins. If you do not identify the starting point, you will quickly get lost on the map. There is one very important point you need to know about the recording. Sections 1, 2, and 3 are always divided into 2 parts. First, you read the questions for the first part and listen to the first part of the recording to answer them. Then, you read the questions for the second part and listen to the second part of the recording. Section 4 is different though. It always has only one part. It is usually an academic lecture and it is not divided into 2 parts. Because of this, you should read all 10 questions for section 4 before the recording starts. One more important thing to remember is this: the questions always follow the order of the recording. This means the answer to question 14, for example, will come before the answer to the question 15. Knowing this helps you a lot during the test. At the end of the paper-based listening test, you get 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. This time is usually more than enough. However, there are 2 important things you need to pay attention to. First, some questions require you to write a letter, not a word. For example, in some tasks, you're asked to write the correct letter from A to H, for example. If you write the word instead of the letter, your answer will be marked wrong. The second important point is spelling. As I mentioned earlier, a spelling mistake or a grammatically incorrect answer means you lose the mark. Because of this, you need to be very careful, especially with capital letters. Just be careful with names of any kind and make sure they start with a capital letter. At the end of the computer-based listening test, you get 2 minutes to check your answers. Use this time to check spelling and basic grammar. And remember this: never leave any question unanswered. You do not lose marks for incorrect answers. If you have already started preparing for IELTS, write in the comments which test and which section you find the most difficult. And if you want me to break down one particular section step by step in a full video, tell me which one in the comments. If you find any value in this video, subscribe to my channel, and come back to watch my future videos. In my next video, I'll explain IELTS reading and share some tips and tricks. Good luck with your exam. Ciao!